So this is of course a very special interview. We have the lucky draw and we have the interview. So if you all know, the people that reacted on the lucky draw video are all in this hat, and also the patrons that are supporting me. So they didn't need to comment, but they are still in the hat. And I am going to draw a name. So of course I cannot edit the moment that I pick your name. So I hope I pronounce it correctly. And this is, by the way, the lovely hat where I take the names out. So I have no clue who is going to win it. So let's open this ticket. And the ticket is for Marianne. I have no clue if I pronounced it correctly, but you are the lucky winner of the Steam keys. So that's very exciting. And I'm also very excited to announce that next month's Steam key will be the Bahamut of the Whack Whack 3. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly, but it's an amazing game. It will come out on the 8th of May. They won a prize at DevCon last year, and I'm very excited to interview her. So to that lucky draw announcement, just go up there and write in the comments. And now we are going to start the interview. This interview has been just before I played the demo of SCHIM, and I was very excited to talk with one of the developers, and he's sharing a lot of knowledge. So without further ado, just tune in and enjoy the interview. Yeah, Niels, it just confuses me already, the name of the game, because, well, we are from the Netherlands, and of course I know how I think it should be pronounced, but how are we going to pronounce it? SCHIM, what's going on there?
Yeah, we get that question a lot, and it makes sense because it's a typical Dutch kind of title and a Dutch word. So we say SCHIM, which is the Dutch pronunciation, but we don't expect anyone in the world to try that for themselves. So SCHIM and SCHIM, that's the ones that we hear a lot as well, and those are also correct.
Yeah, and you also like capitalize it. Why did you do that? In order to attract attention, or is it more like, oh, there is another game that's named like that?
We've looked into it, and we had a couple of discussions about it as well, but we like it to be very clear because it is a bit of a tricky name. Capitalized, you can even see it better what it is. If you just see it uncapitalized, your brain will make some sort of name in their head, or, you know, and that makes it trickier to sort of convey what it actually says. And now people are like, oh, it starts with an S, then a C, an H, and then clearly an I because that's not capitalized. So it's not an L or something, and then an M. And the non-capitalized I is also in the logo. It's where the little SCHIM creature is on top of it as well. So it came from a couple of directions and a couple of reasons, and combined, we felt like this was the best way to showcase the title.
This is a harder time to launch a game, or like what you experience?
It's super weird. It's very layered because on the one hand, we've been working for this for 4 years. We're working towards something that we really want to show to the world and we're super excited about. And on the other hand, we hear people around us that are having a hard time, or even like for your own things where you're contemplating like how much do we need to earn to keep doing this on the long term, and what would be healthy and good for business and these kind of things. In essence, we just like to make cool games that people can play. And like, yeah, and you need money to be able to do that, especially in these times. It's something that you think about more. And then when you release, we just hope that we can get that money that we can actually do what we want to do, especially like for other companies that have to stop or have to change, or it's just such a weird time. I can't really imagine it to be in that situation right now because we're in such a different situation. But we do get a sort of reality check every now and then based on that, I would say. So we're self-publishing. The publisher listed is Extranice. I'm one of the co-founders of Extranice as well. So it's kind of technically me and Ewout are building the game. The Extranice position, we're also helping, but that's a little bit of a different situation. So it's a bit of a layered kind of situation. We do most of the publisher tasks ourselves. And for Asia, we have a publishing partner, which has been a great collaboration so far. They know so much about the Asian market, and we've been sending out stuff and sharing stuff, and sometimes it got picked up in Asia. But then we had to sort of Google Translate and see like, oh, what are they saying? Is this good? Is this nice? Is this, oh, they seem to like it, I think. And then I think there's a sort of barrier there that might be tricky for us to overcome.
Yeah, I think it maybe works in Asia as well because I have been there for a long time and I know they really like cute stuff. And I thought it's a little frog skin thingy. How did you came up with the idea of how it looks?
Started with like just a little sphere, so a sphere object hopping in shadows and not having any features. I think we have some posts about it like online, so you can probably find it. That was just a sort of simple shape, and we felt like that shape really went well with like being zoomed out more and it hopping around, and the shadows themselves have kind of this liquid kind of aspect to it. It's kind of like a little shadow ink-like little creature, frog or
yeah, it feels very froggy-like.
Yes. So there's a couple of elements of different animals. I would say it's interpretable, which is helpful as well. So it is kind of a shape that's, if it jumps around, it's like a little elongated, and it's just something that stretches from shadow to shadow. And you're like, is a schim in the world as well, where if you see something in the corner of your eye and you were just like, did I saw something hop there? No, maybe not. You're not completely sure if they exist or not. And
brainwashing us all so that we're going outside after this and like, oh, it's either.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's part of like the boundaries of imagination and reality, and kind of like that sort of magical in between, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, one of my viewers was also like, I know that there's no story yet in the thing that you showed, but can you tell something about the story?
Yeah, so you are the scheme of a person. Everything in the world that has a shadow has one of these creatures, and they can move out of their shadow, so then the shadow would be empty, but they shouldn't be separated for too long, so they should be attached. It's kind of a soul-linked kind of thing where they need to be together. In the beginning of the story, you start off with the person that you are linked to, and they start off as a little kid, and you can play around and you hop around and you can leave the shadow, come back, and the kid can actually see you as well. Children can see you, and animals can see the same creature as well. He sort of grows up. So in the beginning, the first 10 to 20 minutes or so, you do things with the kid, and then he grows up. He goes through sort of early childhood and young adulthood in that sense. But at a certain point, things don't really go his way. So a couple of things happen to him. He actually gets fired, and there's a couple of other things that happen. He gets a little bit of a moment of reflection, of a sort of hard reset of his life. And that's also the moment where you and your person, they get separated from each other. Actually get thrown out of the shadow, and then he runs off and you try to get back to them.
Okay, so there is another character that is now shadowless?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah. In most levels, it was also in the build that you showed. So in the beginning of a level, you might see someone somewhere in the level with someone.
Oh, yeah, I was like, what is the...
Well, that's that character. Yes, exactly. So there's a little hint of the story in what you showed. But you need to know the context, I guess.
Yeah, I was like, this is super random, like just like starting as a walking man. I was like, okay, yep. Sure,
yep.
Yeah.
Who's that? Why is he there? Yeah. So no, that's kind of like the context of the story. It's kind of the story of these two characters, I would say. The person itself, and you as the schim of the person, and the sort of relationship between them.
Is it a bit like, did you get inspiration from Buddhistic thought that everything has a soul, or?
So sometimes people think like this is like Dutch folklore or Dutch fairy tale or these kind of sense, and I think that's very much what we talked about in the beginning as well. Like, what if we had something like this in the Netherlands? We do have some folklore and these fairy tale kind of stories, but how can we sort of combine these feelings? The Japanese also have these ways of thinking, of course. What if everything has a soul or has something that is linked to them, or a kind of spirit? Or we brought that back to that being a schim. It kind of overlaps with these stories as well. Sometimes when we had to make choices, we thought about these aspects as well, and then contemplated how would that work in the world of schim, and what can we do, what can we not do, of course. Yeah.
How long did the production cost?
In total, 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah. A bit more now than 4 years in total, yeah.
Yeah, you planned before and then you kind of needed to derail, or was it more like it just took a bit long?
The original plan was to make a really small game, because it was about his graduation project, because he did an internship at ActionEye, so at our company. That went really well, and then they had the opportunity to do like a practical exam. He was allowed to do it in a company and create a project based on what was needed or whatever. And we chose to then try that as well, because that was a new thing at that moment. And we gave the option to create their own sort of game, their own concept. And Ewout then started with the basics of SCHIM. The art style and the hopping from shadow to shadow was already done quite early in the beginning. That was also original vision. And from there, Ewout started sharing it online as well. It was also the moment where multiple people picked it up. And we had a couple of calls with some interesting publishers that we didn't imagine would be messaging us for something like this, like a prototype phase. That was also the moment where we were like, okay, we could actually make it bigger. Because originally it was supposed to be just like a couple of hours, maybe 2 hours or something. And not really story lore heavy. Even though we would still think about it, we wouldn't probably make it clear or in the game or just a very limited version of this world. But from there, we started looking into it more and what can we tell, what can we show, what can we do, which kind of extra features can we do.
If I hear this correctly, you didn't suspect it to be successful at all. But then suddenly there was awareness around that it was really cool. And then you guys were like, oh, it has potential. That's, I hear the thing.
Yes, yeah. I think in essence, that's what you always have with each project, where you're like, we like this, but does this match the things we think is in there? If you make a prototype, you don't make it to be not successful, but you don't assume it's going to be successful, I would say. You make it, you test it, you show it to people, and then see if it resonates in the way that you envision it, because you might become blind for like your own project, of course, or you're like, oh, I love it. But then someone else is like, I don't really get it. And then it's like, okay, we tried, or it could be interesting to explore it later. Or so I think it's very good to always keep that in mind. We made the scope really small to make it realistic and to get it out there. If you don't do that, especially if it's a limited time with graduation or something, then it will not be able to be finished or completed or be released or something like that. So yeah.
I mean, 4 years is quite a long time though.
Yes, but with 2 people, I mean, I think technically we could have released something way earlier, but then it would have been a way simpler version of it. And I think we've made some decisions in the game where a lot of people really like those features, maybe even the most, which came in those later stages of the project where you're like, okay, everything works, everything's fun now. What is that final sort of polish, that sprinkle on top that makes you feel like, oh yes, I'm in this world, I'm experiencing this world, I can play around.
What is that sprinkle?
I would say definitely big parts of the story where we had basic versions of the story at a certain point. People had different ideas about it, and some were like, oh yeah, I can just hop around, I'm having fun, and that's okay, so I don't mind that much. But we had a story to tell and a sort of thing that we wanted to convey, and that took quite a lot of extra time to get that right. I think it's a very layer on top of the total game, and a lot of people, if they try the game, they're like, oh wait, there's a story, oh this is more than I expected, something extra to experience.
I mean, just suddenly randomly a trash can in the lake, but it's like, so those are just really scripted things, but in the story it's like, does it make sense to find a trash can? Like, are you understanding what you're going to do, or are you just jumping and then a random object is there and then you're like, oh yeah, this is useful? Yeah,
so I do think that the demo that you played requires more context. So maybe we shouldn't share it that much because there's a lot of questions that you have that are not answered as much, I would say. So that's a good test for us as well. Like I said, every SCHIM creature in the world has a shadow that they're linked to. So every shadow and everything in the world can also lose their SCHIM. The trash can, for example, was vandalized, or it was thrown in the water, and the SCHIM somewhere in the vicinity was trying to look for it. And then if you find it and you put it back, but that's kind of introduced in another level, of course. So for you found it and you used it and you activated it in that way, but yeah, contextless.
Random trash can appears.
Yeah. So in this case, you placed it back, and that created a shadow that helps you get further as well. But most of the time, it's also like the collectible system. So if there's a SCHIM in the vicinity and it's hopping around, and you clearly see that it's looking for something, then you can find the collectible in the area and try to explore it a bit more. Or
I noticed in the first level the little eyes on. Of course, because of the demo, they didn't really like give more hints than just be there.
Yeah, and some are just there. They just sort of greet you, or they are also looking at you like, where are you going? Or just being in the world. And
Okay, that's exciting. Okay, cool. Is the studio 2 people or more?
Yeah. So the studio itself actionizes a couple of people. So we're with 3 people, but we also have a couple of freelancers, and it's more project bound, I would say. But Ewout is technically not in Actionize, but we work together in that sense, and he's always at the office because his office as well. He works partially remote, partially from home, partially at the office. But that's kind of the situation where we have multiple people at the office. Now the core team is relatively small, but we work together with a couple of people, and then it's always a little bit busier.
Yeah, because 4 years you need to have something of a stable income or some funding, or how did that work out? The other projects are helping with.
Yeah, so we do client work as well, and we do all kinds of different projects. We've done some serious games and some entertainment games, and we've done quite a variety. And we actually like to make serious games as well, because I hear a lot of people say yeah, you need to make an income and whatever. But we actually like that we can teach people or convey something in a way that can be more interactive and fun.
I do as well. I'm a teacher, and I'm like, come on, guys, but you can make
Yes.
something cool out of
It can be so
this.
cool. You can convey such interesting things. So we do that as well, and there's definitely projects that are not aligning to us, I would say. If it's really just about selling a project or a product or something, then it might not be a fit for us unless we can really find a good angle. So far we've done quite a variety of things where more towards entertainment or more serious, we've been doing it for a total of around 9 years with the studio. So that also helped getting a bit of buffer and being able to experiment a bit more and taking some risks.
But at the start, how do you kind of start with getting work when you are just establishing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think most importantly, tell everyone what you're doing. That's the biggest thing, I would say, because especially in the beginning, we had a couple of people who are like, oh yeah, my uncle, he has a company and they do this and they're looking for a good way to do this. And I was thinking about you, and does that make sense? And you're like, oh, that sounds super interesting. And then you can explore these ways. Especially in the beginning, we had a lot of potential clients where we were talking about it and it wasn't even clear yet if they needed a game or if they wanted a game or something completely different. And that's also cool about that exploration, that you're not just like, oh, you want a game, we're going to make that game, but more like, oh, what do you actually need and how can we convey that and what is your goal? And I think that works if you just tell everyone. And besides that, I think there are multiple places online where you can sort of show what you're doing or tell your services, and in these ways, freelance websites or these kind of things. And most of the time we do that as a sort of service where we just help out at beginning of projects. So most of the time it's just helpful for them and it's not really about income for us. And then it's more about a first step of trying to figure out do we want to work more together? So consultancy or game concept, thinking about issues that they have. And then most of the time they follow up with something like, oh, actually, we really like that idea that you just proposed or pitched, but can you also make that? And then we're like, yeah, of course we can. And then we go into a prototyping, and then so most clients we've picked up like that, where it's very gradual, where you start collaborating and try if there's a good match, make a prototype. Pretty much every time we made a prototype, they get super excited, and then we continue working with them. So yeah.
So it's basically like we see in the game industry, you are making a vertical slide for a publisher, for example. That's also the same thing if you want to find clients, if I hear this correctly.
Yeah. If you really do it in milestones and with steps and everything, then I think it's really good for clients to work with us in that sense, because they can stop whenever they want. They don't need okay, let's commit for 8 months right away. Most of the time we start off with 2 weeks and already give them an interesting prototype. If that already conveys their core goals and everything, then they get a good feeling of oh, this is actually really interesting for us and we need to explore this further. Let's try at least another month or 2 months. And then based on that, most of the time people are like, okay, let's do the whole project. We got a good idea of what it's going to be.
And I also know a lot of people, especially starting there, are a bit afraid of asking money. Do you have some advices on that?
So yeah, when we do consultancy or concepts or whatever, there's always a little bit of money, but it's mostly symbolic. Depending on the...
It's a wine It's a wine bottle.
I think it's important because otherwise people tend to want to just see whatever and try stuff out and just... But if they even have a symbolic kind of gesture where it boils down to practically nothing for the team who's working on it. At least they need to commit a little bit as well. Then you get a better sort of starting point, I would say. You can already filter out people who are like, yeah, I've got this idea, maybe I want to do something with this, and could you make me like a mock-up? And you're like, yeah, sure. And you're hopping on board and you're going all in, and then nothing comes out of it because they're like, yeah, I've got another idea right now. I'm doing a web shop instead of a game, you know. It's also cool.
The ID guy.
Yes. So it's a lot about commitment, I would say. If you can push them enough that they feel that they at least also are committing something or something.
Yeah, so it's really building up the trust with a client as well, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I put it back to the game industry, like a publisher is often it's just a one-time commitment. If I see around most publishers.
I think it depends. We haven't worked with a publisher in that way yet, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it, or trying to find a publisher. And most of the times I get the feeling that there's different publishers. So there's publishers who just want to help with marketing only, and they don't spend any budget on it. There's publishers who want to join in the beginning of a project or only at the end of the project, or everything in between, of course. There's also publishers who go from milestones. So they sort of start, they invest, and if the deadlines are met or the criteria are met, or they do tests and everything, the payment in different sort of milestones as well. And there's pros and cons for all of those, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, and you found pros and cons in your own publisher. Well, I mean, it makes sense if you do your own publishing thing, of course, but have you done that before as well, before SCHIM?
No, we have some experience with like business sides of things, but on a varied kind of level. So not in this sense that we are doing now. So there's a lot of firsts for us in this project, which is also very cool. Can be a bit daunting or scary at times, of course. We had sort of the rule that since we had talks with publishers from the beginning, that we always felt like there was this sort of backup plan. So each task that we tried to do that felt like a publisher task that they could be helping with, we tried it and we experimented with it. We did it our way, and then reflected on it like, okay, do we actually like this to do this? But also time-wise, does it make sense? Are we doing it well? Are we doing it okay? Or so we're reflecting on a couple of factors in that. Whenever we found something that we thought we couldn't do, or we didn't like, or just don't want to spend time on because we're just not the experts for it, then we could always still look into having a publisher or an external party that could help with that. So yeah.
What was your biggest lesson in that? Like, because you said like, I learned some things we did well, some things not.
Yeah, it's a different answer for me than for Ewout, because we both learned different things. I think Ewout learned a lot about porting, and he liked that a lot. So he might want to do more of that in the future as well. For me, I think it's also very interesting to figure out that there's a lot of these tasks that we actually like to do as well. If we can actually spend time on it, then it's actually a lot of interesting work that can be done. And I think a lot of people ask us about like marketing and these kind of things. I think sharing a lot, if you genuinely want to share, then that's a very good approach. If you don't like doing that, then find some help for someone who does that for you or something. Yeah.
As a publisher, you most likely also like more budget compared to
yes
indies.
Probably yes, depends on some publishers are a bit smaller and they do in-house and mostly organic and everything. We also do everything organic. We just post it, we just share it, we see where it comes. That has pros and cons, I guess. We will probably do some experiments in the coming months with a couple of paid promotion maybe, but we don't have a lot of experience with that, so we'll see how that goes.
I had an interview with Pat Noam before about grassroots marketing, and he noted that like he's trying different social media, right? And for him, Instagram, like Twitter, not so much. And so did you also have the feel like, oh, I'm just posting different things, and at some channels we are stronger than in others, and like maybe we know why?
yeah, for sure. It's sometimes hard to find the true conclusions, of course. It's based on assumptions as well. And my feeling is that anyone who tells you differently that they know for sure might be just bullshitting, because there's a lot of assumptions going on. But you can analyze a lot, I think. There's definitely people who can do that way better than we do, because we just look at some things and we try to make assumptions based on that. But for example, we started with Twitter, and I think Twitter is kind of nice for journalists and press and other things, because they look around and they scout a bit, and then if they see something interesting, they might want to post something about it. Or so I think that's really an interesting platform as well.
Do you think it's changed a lot because of the name change, the community a bit?
I think it has, but I'm not sure if we have experienced and felt it that much. There's a lot of corners to Twitter X, as I should actually say. Whenever I type twitter.com, I get there. In my mind, that's kind of the thing that sticks in my head, I suppose. But yeah, and for the other platforms, we started to experiment, and each time where we had the feeling that a platform worked and we had a sort of thing going in a sort of system, we slowly added more. So About started experimenting with all kinds of platforms, Tumblr, on Imager, on co-host, Mastodon. We've added pretty much all of them, and we kept posting, but we do notice that some are having more impact, of course, than others. TikTok was an interesting experiment, because that was one where we really felt like this could be a hard mismatch, or could be
I think
nice
it is
match,
great for TikTok. I assume.
Yes, I don't know, because if you try something new and you don't have a lot of experience with it, or you don't have a very clear idea of what it is or what it isn't, you always feel like you might be intruding or something, where you're like, okay, you don't know the rules, we're experimenting, and then you try it, and then if it works, you're like, oh, cool, this is also a very cool platform, or a nice place, or there's a lot of cool things going on. I mean, I used TikTok a bit for myself. I browse it every now and then as well, but still, it's still hard to define, like, what will you get out of it, or how can you communicate with your community there, or
the smoothness of the speed in the game. I think that works very well for TikTok, but that's more an assumption.
Yeah, we did notice that every time we have like something like 8 seconds or something, we'll know what the core mechanics are of the game. That's just so nice. I mean, we have a couple of other prototypes before SCHIM where if you try to convey that in 8 seconds, it's just not possible, or you don't feel it, or you don't questions and you don't want to comment, or like, oh, wow, and how does that work? Or the more you have that, the more it seems to work well on social media as well, of course. We did notice for like TikTok, there's more people who really would like to have it on mobile phone, because they are using their phone more often, that they are also gamers who like to game on their phone. So that's a sort of thing where we are like, on release, we won't have anything on mobile. A lot of people are like, maybe for the App Store, maybe for this, maybe for that. And then we're like, we'll look into it later. We'll think about it. We'll thoroughly look at these. And then people are like, oh, okay, got it. But most people are still very enthusiastic. And
I mean, you can maybe just use your finger to move and then tap if you need to tap. I mean, just...
I think there's definitely options, but I also feel like we're designing another game in a way to, yes. It's for later.
Okay, well, I hear there can be some plans.
We don't guarantee anything, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We will definitely look into it eventually. But if that's like a year later, or 2 years later, or half year later, we don't know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there are a lot of this moment, of course, like how it's going to turn out. But if I hear it correctly, you have a lot of different target audiences. So that really helps in the equation?
Yes, well, different consoles already helps, of course. Yeah, it resonates on different levels, I suppose, with players. So there's people who like platforming, there's people who like abstract art style, there's people who like the idea of these creatures in the shadow world. And so I think we've got a couple of angles that we all think combine to what is SCHIM. But these are all different ways of people who are like, oh, I really like that, and then I'll also like the other stuff. That's really helpful, I guess.
So how does it look like? Because the game will be launched in like less than 2 months. Yeah, how are these last weeks? Like, is there more stress? Is there more rush on your social media? It's a different schedule, right?
Yeah, I think we're experimenting a bit more as well with like social media and everything. And there's also other stuff surrounding like things with the consoles, and we have a physical announced for Asia. Well, for 4 years, you're switching between tasks, but we're switching between tasks maybe even more on a daily basis right now, which is exciting, but also sometimes when you are trying to figure out like what is the most important thing to do right now or priority wise, it can be a bit daunting or a bit like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's see what needs to be done first, in which order, what do we do when, and what would be nice to have, and yeah, that kind of stuff.
So yeah, and the other projects are still like going on as well. It's not that everyone is now focusing on SCHIM or...
No. So Ewout and I are focusing on SCHIM, and we have an intern who does a bit of art. So they are also sometimes doing sketches for SCHIM or some ideas or for social media or these kind of things. That's really cool to have like that addition. But they also work on other games as well. So it's more of an additional thing instead of like a core team kind of thing, I would say.
Story, is it going to be introduced in audio or in text and like with localization? Like how is that working out?
I would say neither.
Oh, okay.
Because
okay.
we use animation mainly to tell the story, which has been challenging. But I think the results are very much in line with what we want. So localization-wise, it's quite doable, and we also localized in a lot of languages. So I think we have 34 or 35 languages localized, and there's a little bit of text here and there for the introduction and getting to controls and everything. So it was nice to see that you actually got around, of course. Yeah, most things are fairly easy because there's not a lot of controls, and it's quite doable for new players as well, even if they jump in the middle. We also did motion capture for the animations.
What?
So we actually got a motion capture suit, and that is really helpful to convey the story and make things really clear and very specific.
Wait, because I played the demo and I did not see anything that was like, oh, this needs a motion capture.
No, but if you do, there is extra charm and extra flavor. And we selected the levels for this demo, of course, do not contain any story elements, I would say. With the story elements, there's definitely even more reliant on motion capture and making it even more clear. But there's these small things. I'm not sure if you tried that, but you can interact with shadows as well. So you have, I'm not sure.
I mean, I just jumped into a pool with a shadow, but it was more like it was jumping up and I was like, cute. And then I just jumped.
Right, yes.
Yes. That was the interaction.
There's an interact button as well, and then everything that has a shadow you can interact with. Sometimes it just makes a sound, or it turns it on or off, or something like an animation. But sometimes it actually changes the way the level works or the way you can go through the level. Easy example would be traffic light, which you can turn green or turn red, or if you're in the shadow of that object, you can activate it, and then stuff around the level actually changes as well. And that's also a very interesting place to put a lot of like extra animation and these kind of things, where if you, for example, use the interact button on a car, the car honks. After just pedestrians passing by, they respond to it, or they're like, whoa, what's going on? Or they look at it, and what we call theater pieces, where it's a very specific thing that you kind of activate and happens, and you can play around a little bit with that as well.
I guess the answer is no, but were you thinking about multiplayer?
We've talked about it, and there's definitely things that might be interesting, but we wanted to tell a single player story. I think there might be some cool things that we could do with it in the future, maybe, but we don't have any plans for it. And it's, again, as if you're making 2 more games, I would say.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Multiplayer is always quite a hassle, and I think you get a different game, which is interesting, but you get a different game as well.
So single player was at the start, it is going to be a single player, and that's and the inspiration of it all was this Ewout came with this and you all go with it, or was it like
the core inspiration was the art style itself, kind of like the Linclair kind of style from Belgian artists, like from Tintin, for example. So that sort of real clear pronounced style, that's something he really wanted to convey with like shaders and built in that way. So that was quite an essential core thing. Another interesting thing is that Ewout has a form of color blindness, so that's also why it conveys it really nicely in just only 4 colors per level. And originally we only had like 1 color palette, but we talked about it and we tried some other things, like what if it's a different moment in the day or a different emotion, and from there we added more color palettes, which was really nice and felt even more rich. So that's kind of like where the style came from. I would say there's a lot of different inspirations. One of the inspirations that we felt more and more as we continued working in the beginning on the game is also that sort of childlike playfulness. If you're young, you kind of imagine rules and you play around in the world and you don't tell anyone and no one else is playing, you're just playing on your own, staying within the lines on a crosswalk or like things like that. And I think that's a feeling that we wanted to convey in the game and also show it in some of these theater pieces and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it has also a bit of a feel of those, like that black and white books were as well, though.
Cool, yeah. We also feel like the world is one of the characters in a sense, where the things do their own thing and they have their own sort of things moving around and they have their own sort of places they want to go. And as a whole, it feels like one thing as well, where it's like this organic kind of world. At least that's what we try to convey.
Also, if we go back to the demo, which is of course a difficult thing, but like I suddenly jumped into a bird and became bird. Like, is it like this you can take over?
Oh, in the beginning of the game, that's what you can do with your person, because that's who you're linked to. So if you're within the shadow, you can also move around with the kid, but you can't control other shadows or anything. You can influence them, like with the interact. So you indirectly sometimes do stuff. You never fully control something else because you are only linked to your person. So that's kind of like what the story element of that is as well.
Weird year to ask, but yeah, if you want to set up as any developer now, like what would be your top-notch advice?
Good question. I think there's different advices that people can give, and I think my angle or our angle that we have approached it is kind of experiment and take things a bit slow. And it's good to take risks every now and then, but if you're constantly taking risks, you can't really be working on making something good or creative or interesting. So I think people who just quit their job and build the game of their dreams, that will be very stressful if it doesn't work out. And I think most of the time, if you have something on the side and you can have like a buffer or just be sustainable on a long term and not be reliant on your passion project in the beginning, at least, because that's probably why you joined the game industry. No one starts a very cool game idea just because they want to get rich. It's easier to become rich in all kinds of different industries. So that's also a tip, I think. But taking it slow or doing something on the side or try spending the extra hours you have into your passion projects. And if that gets picked up, then try to move more into it. If you do it the other way around, it's also possible. I've seen people do that, but it's more risk, maybe more reward, but also, yeah, if it doesn't turn out well, then it might be upsetting or that you feel like you failed or something, which is not true. But so taking it slow is probably the best tip and reflecting on what you're doing, I would say.
So if I hear this correctly, you are more like, oh, please take it safe. Don't quit your job. Just see what happens.
I mean, I would love to see more games and more interesting things. So if you quit your job and you make something cool, then yeah, sure. But if it doesn't work out, still keep that in mind. What would happen then? And if you only go all in on one thing and it doesn't work, then that's just really disappointing or sad. Or just having a job on the side and just doing it partially is probably a good approach if you want to start. Another thing that I've seen, especially with students, if they come up to us and they ask us questions like, hey, how do you do this? Because we have a team of like 5 friends or something, and we really want to get going and we want to start a company. We really like each other and we have a cool idea. And that is also a bit tricky because sometimes if you need to work together, I think it's better to keep that open and to work together. And then when you have something interesting and cool that you want to explore, then think about, okay, we're going to be a team and be a company. And but it should start probably with some experimentation first. And it doesn't hurt to get some experience in the field just at another company. I mean, I haven't really done that, but I think it's not bad to do that and do something on the side and then go into your own dream projects.
Yeah, you guessed my next question. How did you go into the game industry?
At a younger age, I did small games kind of things where it was more like board games or playing outside, these kind of games. I didn't really think about it that was already part of like game design, maybe. Reflecting on it, it was, I guess. I used to draw a lot, like at middle school. I kind of stopped with that, I suppose, or did it less. I think those are already sort of the fundamentals that you want to create stuff or make stuff or that kind of feeling. And then I did a study and I was contemplating going for game design. So I looked at Breda and also HKU in Utrecht, and also went to Amsterdam to check that as well, because there's also a game study in Amsterdam. But I had the feeling that that was also part of that going all in on one thing in an industry that's about being creative and maybe making it. I wasn't sure if that was the best approach. So I did communication and multimedia design, which is a bit broader. That way I could still explore game design. And then I could also try out other stuff like marketing or maybe web development or programming or different sort of areas. As I did the study, I realized game design was actually the most interesting thing. So I went more all in during the study. But at least I had the option and the possibility to adjust if needed. But yeah, I could have done like a game design study as well, I suppose. But this was kind of nice because it was still had the options open, I would say.
Yeah, you find a way how to do it a bit in a safe way because you have different projects. You were doing like with two people, basically a game,
and
right?
there's different risks in that as well. But I think there's not one cookie cutter way, of course, but it's more keeping in mind that where do you want to take risks and where do you not want to take risks, or what makes you feel comfortable if it doesn't work out well, and if you are okay and you can handle that kind of situation, then it should be okay.
There are some risks. So what are the risks that you were like, oh, we survived these kind of risks, but we knew that they were on?
Well, I think, like I mentioned earlier, our sort of way of approaching it, if we work with a client, for example, we always do it for very cheap or practically free in the beginning. If all of those clients didn't follow up or we didn't get anything out of it, you can't do that for indefinitely. So it works for us since we do get clients out of it. But if that's not the case, then we can't just keep doing that, of course. So there's always risks in that as well. If you have like a client that's ready there for 4 years or something, then that's safer in a way than having all these different clients where you're exploring, like, can we help you? Is that interesting? Or
Because we already covered the clients, but then you said like you go to different websites. I was only thinking, Fiverr. I think there are other ones.
I think Fiverr is an interesting one as well. We also use that one. It's interesting because there's hobbyists there. There's also people who want to maybe start something as a business, or there's businesses who just have a lot of money, but they just explore and they just, we'll hire all of these people. And then that's sort of like first initial test, I would say. And then if they like it, then they can always do more with them. That's interesting as well. And also for people who want to start something like a company or freelance or something, it's a great way to learn how to interact and get to the point with clients as well. What is it they want? What is it you can do? And then if you practice that a lot, which you can do on Fiverr, of course, then it's, again, not necessarily about the amount of money that you make, but also about experience and learning stuff and getting these interactions.
If I hear this correctly, so you suggest like, please go out, develop yourself first, and then try it out, basically.
Yeah, but and you still make a little bit of money or a lot, depending on what you're doing or how good you are or whatever. But in the end, you will be learning stuff, which will help you either way, I suppose.
So I hear a lot about like failure is great. It brings you back up, basically.
Yeah, in a creative process, failure is probably the most important thing, where you learn stuff and you try stuff and you get new insights and everything. So yeah. Don't be afraid to fail is important.
We didn't discuss the audio. I think it's super cute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What was the thought about that?
I mentioned that we're with the two of us, but we do have an audio team and they're based in Brazil. They joined us quite early on. Because on social media, we got a lot of people who told us that they want to do audio for the game. And we checked quite a lot of their portfolios as well. So we did want to look into them and find the right partnership or collaboration. And Moonsailor, who's the audio team, they do also audio for like TV series and movies, mainly in Brazil, so Latin America. But they do it really well, and they got a really good team of experts who were open to explore what we thought it should be, because based on a video that we already released back then, they did their own audio take on it, which had a very melancholy kind of vibe to it. And it was really good, but we felt the game could use more playfulness, more jolliness, experimenting, hopping around, that kind of feeling. So we told them we really liked it, but that was the direction we were looking for. And they were like, okay, cool. We're going in a completely different direction. We love it. And they tried some more stuff before even collaborating with us. So they did some experiments as well. They sent it over and we really loved it. So yeah, we started working with them from either the first year or beginning of the second year in the process that we already had them on board. Yeah, it was really cool to have a lot of communication during which the game was still being developed, because sometimes you hear these stories of audio gets done at the last moment or at the end. We have a lot of different soundtracks and I love all of them. And I really think they convey the right feeling of the game, and they enrich the game in a very good way. Yeah,
that's really cool. I think we should not discuss it. I think because AI is very important in our industry, it's going to change a lot. And of course, people are screaming like, "Oh, audio is the first one to fall out of the equation because it seems to be so easy." If I hear this in your way, you would not consider that? No.
Maybe in the future, I'm not sure, but currently the state of AI and how everything is going is not in line with what we think. So we don't use any AI for the game or for any of the process. But there might be in the future cool ways incorporating it and with good rules and the right legal kind of things around it. But right now it's kind of like the Wild West.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as a teacher, I try to be neutral as possible, which is hard in this discussion.
I mean, there's a lot of artists by definition that they hate AI because it will just destroy creativity of humankind. And if you bring it down back to that could happen, and that would be a shame. But I've also talked with a couple of very cool indie devs who used AI in a very specific way, that it worked in a very interesting way, that they generated, for example, enemies and everything in the world was generated in a specific way that used that AI, where I'm like, maybe that could be cool, maybe that works, and I'll have to try it. And it depends per situation what works and what doesn't. And I think it's important that people are paid for what they're doing and that they get respected for what they're doing, and that it's not just some black box where we don't know what's going on and it's just randomly popping out stuff that people can use and everyone becomes a creative, but it's unclear what they are actually doing and how much it makes sense together. Because I think with the example that you're giving, like if you replace soundtracks or something with AI generated ones, then sure, there's music, but it's not just a tick on a checkbox that, oh yeah, there's music, so now it's enough. I think it needs to convey what the rest of the experience also needs to convey, and it needs to work together. And I think AI at this moment can't really do that. Maybe it can inspire people, maybe it can help create clearer texts or images, but if you use it literally in something, I think in most situations it's tricky to get it right, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree on your opinion. I just wanted to introduce it as neutral as possible. But yeah, secretly that's also my opinion on the case. But I think, we need to talk about it, and I think that is important because we see how the industry is affected by it. I think the AAA industry is affected by it more than the indie scene, but it's more my feeling with it.
I mean, we have opinions, but we are definitely not experts in the field. And you talk about it, you create clear opinions, and you try to get informed as much as possible. So we talk with people who hate it, we talk with people who love it, and we try to explore, like, what does it mean? And for SCHIM, we just have a very basic rule. We don't use any AI. And that makes it super simple and clear. And we can convey that, and then, yeah. We'll see how the future will change, I suppose.
I think we covered a lot. We even covered like the AI question even. So, so do you think, there is something that I haven't shared and that's still in top of my mind?
I think we tackled a lot of interesting things. There's always more to explore, but who knows, future episodes or future things, or whenever you tried the game in the full context, of course. Yeah, thank
you for being here. So that was really cool. A lot of different angles again about approaching indie dev. I hope you enjoyed it. The next interview will Bahamut mood of the Wak Wak tree, of course. So if you don't want to miss that one, subscribe, ring the bell and be notified, or be notified as a patron or on my LinkedIn with my newsletter. So I see you in the next one. Stay tuned, enjoy more, create more. This was Acreates. Bye bye.